Hello again. The BBC really have excelled themselves in their latest dramatisation of Great Expectations. It is the work of a fellow called Stephen Knight, who has written a series called Peaky Blinders, of which I have heard, but with which I cannot pretend to be familiar. It seems though that it is about gangsters before the war, and he's chosen to use the same format for Dickens. Pip, the protagonist, apparently swears like a trooper in the new production, even using what we once quaintly called the F word. Magwitch delivers a speech in which he criticises the British Empire as being for the benefit of privileged white men. And of course, half the major characters are black. Ashley Thomas, a Jamaican pop singer who performs under the pseudonym of Bashi, has been given the role of Jaggers, the lawyer. I give a link to a piece from a newspaper which explains that period dramas have traditionally cast white actors in the belief that olden day society was ethnically homogenous, as indeed it was. But Thomas points out that by 1760 there were 15,000 black people living in London, a reality not widely reflected in school history textbooks. I've seen this figure of 15,000 people in London in 1760, widely quoted, but I've never been able to track down any reference for it. Certainly anybody looking at a photograph of a Victorian street scene will see at once that every single person is white. The idea that there would be a black barrister in London in the 1840s and that nobody would find this odd is absolutely ridiculous. I suppose, though, that if you repeat a lie often enough, especially to children, they will sooner or later accept it as the truth. It will certainly work well enough with the Hitler Youth. Estelle, too, is black, of course. She may be seen with Ashley Thomas, or Bashi, as I suppose I really ought to call him, in the thumbnail to this video. The real reason why this new production has been made with lots of black people swearing and violence is, of course, because it is aimed at the lucrative American and international market, rather than intended to be watched by children in this country at Sunday tea time, as used to be the case with BBC productions of Dickens. It is certainly cultural vandalism, but with a strong business edge. That somehow makes it less offensive to know that they are only doing it for the money rather than being motivated by any ideological considerations. What I find slightly odd is this. 40 years ago, there were plenty of black people in American films and television shows. They represented, though, roughly 1 in 6 or 7 of the characters. This was realistic and perfectly fair, being the actual proportion of African Americans at the time. Nor were they restricted to minor roles. One remembers Bill Cosby and also Danny Glover in Lethal Weapon. Somehow, though, since then, the idea has become that black people should be more important, that any film which does not have black people in leading roles is somehow deficient. This attitude has, of course, contaminated British cinema and television too. After all, when America sneezes, Britain catches a cold, proverbially. What is going on now with things like this new production of Great Expectations is not about fairness or realism at all. It's more about pushing a particular worldview, one which is devoted to both running down Western civilization while at the same time promoting people of African heritage as being in some way special, that is to say, more virtuous and worthy than the rest of us. There is something faintly sinister about this.